Well, hello and welcome to the Footy Interchange. Adam Papalia with you, and it is great to be back. Season 2, looking forward to a big year. And this year we are here thanks to SavvyWise, going to be great partners of the program. And you know the drill if you've been here before. This is the show where we're a little bit different. We're a little bit more thorough, a bit more in-depth than everybody else because we go around the country and we check in with each and every footy state ahead of opening round. So looking forward to getting to all of our experts, which we're going to get to in just a second. But we do have a big announcement off the top of the show because Scully's just found himself a little bit sick of his own voice this season, which is good. So we've just moved him to the side a little bit. We got the checkbook out. We went to the free agents list and we went as big as we possibly could. The contract negotiations took a very, very long time, but we finally got him over the line. 200 gamer with Fremantle, four-time Glendenning Allen medalist, and, of course, an All-Australian in 2003, which he made sure that I threw in there as well. Paul Hasleby, welcome to you, mate. Great to have you on the Footy Interchange this year.
Hey, thank you, Paps. Great to be here. Let's not sugarcoat it off the top. He got dropped. Will Schofield dropped. He's out, and I've come in. Band 4, compensation as a free agent into the team. But excited to be with you and can't wait for a big year.
Well, Scully always jokes about the fact that he never got picked round 1 when he was in his playing career. So
some blokes just time their run so well, don't they? Like Bailey Banfield's one that's always out of the side in the pre-season, but through luck and misfortune to others, finds himself back in the side.
So, mate, it's great to have you here. We've worked together a little bit before on radio. You're doing a bit of different stuff this year to what you have been doing over the last couple of years. So the opportunity was there to bring you on board. And I'm really keen to chat to you, mate, because you've been a great voice in the media, particularly in the West, for those that haven't been over this side of the country. In hitting a lot of the issues, particularly around the local clubs, but bigger across the competition as well. So great to have you on. Looking forward to chatting through West Coast and Freo stuff, but the competition as a whole. How are you feeling going into this year? Like I'm actually excited about this season. We're on the eve of another one. A few little rule changes in there. We're hoping for a bit more of an even competition this year. Wildcard round coming in. I just think there's a few different little exciting things in that it's got to set it up for a big year.
Always excited to see who's going to come out on top. I think this year all roads are going to go through Queensland. You look at those two teams, I think Brisbane's going to be better with what they bring into their team, what they get back through players that have been injured in recent times. The Gold Coast Suns will be up there. But I still think there's going to be a disparity between the top teams and the bottom teams. We saw that last year with the top 9 that separated from the rest. Obviously a top 10 this year, which makes it a bit more intriguing to see who's going to make it in. But I just feel the teams at the bottom that have taken a long time to rebuild, like North Melbourne and Richmond are going through it, West Coast, I still think they've got some pain ahead.
What were you thinking watching that pre-season game on Sunday with West Coast? I was calling the action. And it just had that sense, like it was a really good crowd there. Sold out, Amy Community Series, Sunday afternoon of a long weekend. The crowd, you could feel them just wanting to get into it and cheer and have something to hope for. Must have been just a flat feeling for Eagles supporters and the team itself when you put up a performance like that off a pre-season based off so much hope that, okay, this year it's finally going to change. The wheel's going to turn and we're going to be a bit better.
Not just the fans. I think everybody feels it. I think people in the media feel it, even though I'm an ex-Fremantle player. You want West Coast to go well. You want the derbies to be competitive. You want them competing. But when you saw that, after seeing something similar for the last 4 years, it was discouraging for everybody involved with that football club. There's some green shoots, and that'll be the focus this year on some of those younger kids coming through. But it is taking a long time for teams to rebuild, and perhaps the AFL needs to look at that and how they can speed that process up. But if you're a West Coast fan, you're hiding again, and it makes it a little bit easier. Not that it's a foregone conclusion that they'll win both derbies, but 2 wins, if you can beat West Coast twice here throughout the season, it's a big start to your year.
Well, that was why we saw the ladder with such a discrepancy last year, because you had so many teams, 3 or 4 in particular, that were so much off the pace. It just meant that those teams at the top, could bank a couple of wins if you played them twice, and it got that big gap between the top 9 and the rest of the competition. So we hope that that's a little bit better. West Coast, early predictions. Are you changing your mind after seeing what happened on the weekend in terms of how many games you think they can win this year?
I'm not. I didn't have them winning more than 5 going into that game. I think they'll be competitive, and I think it's better to have that sort of experience at the start of the year in the pre-season because you now have 2 weeks to get it right. And they've still got some personnel to come back in. Starcevic is going to make a difference. Ruben Jimby as well. I think Tim Kelly's another one that looks primed to have a big year through the midfield. So they get those three sort of more experienced players into the side. Liam Duggan is another one to come back. It's not all doom and gloom, and they have time to turn it around. And I'm hopeful that they will do that over the next 2 weeks and be competitive. And that's what they need. They need to bring that average losing margin back to about 20 points. Do that, I think the future looks bright because they now have a lot of top-end talent, but they need that top-end talent to really step up. If you go through Elijah Hewitt, for example, year 3 or year 4 now, they would have been penciling him in as a mainstay through the midfield. Right now, he's out of the side. Harley Reid's another one, year 3. You're expecting big things. Just looking at the first 2 preseason games, I'm just starting to think, well, is he closer to his ceiling than perhaps the competition and also the West Coast fans would hope for?
The Eagles were one of the big talking points out of the preseason just because of how poor they were. North Melbourne were a bit in that boat after their first community series game. They fought back against a pretty undermanned Collingwood team. So it's Richmond, it's North, isn't it? West Coast, those types of teams that we need to see some improvement from.
And you're probably starting to think maybe it's Port Adelaide, change of coach, maybe it's Melbourne, but the change of coach looks like to have paid dividends in the way that they're playing, fresh environment, new voice, new game style. Port Adelaide, just on them, we talk a lot about West Coast, but Port and Melbourne, I think, have been two of the main improvers from the outside looking in over the pre-season.
Yeah, looking forward to chatting to Dom Cassisi a little bit later on in the program about Port Adelaide and Josh Carr's influence there around that one. They're building up into a new season, opening round. So we get to this week. They've shoehorned in a game in Melbourne as part of opening rounds. It just feels like you're still leaving some teams out of this equation. For me, I would love to see it just go full round of footy. Let's just get playing and get everyone into it.
It's a joke. The AFL need to make a move on this next year. I think originally they wanted to bring it in when the NRL was leaving town going to Vegas, but the last 2 years they've missed that. I don't really see the point in doing it, and I think it's really unfair to the teams that have to play in round 1 against teams that have already played one game. I remember through pre-season, the very first game of the year, no matter how hard you work through the pre-season, how many pre-season games you play, the very first game I used to cramp all the time. Second game, no cramp. So you're going to have teams like Fremantle coming up against Geelong who have already played in that opening round, which I just think's unfair. And the stats will back that up. I think over the last 2 years, it's 7 out of 8 of the teams that played round 1 have actually gone on, opening round, have actually gone on to win round 1. So I think they need to make a call on it. The idea was to get some eyeballs in the northern states. I don't understand why you just can't play Thursday night, Friday night, big Saturday night in those northern states with big teams and then roll the rest out through Saturday and Sunday to make it fair for everybody involved.
It feels like it's the haves and the have-nots a little bit in terms of those teams that are now getting an opportunity. And the AFL tick it off because, that game, St Kilda and Collingwood will have a massive crowd and they'll say, oh, how good's this? But for the teams that are sitting on the sidelines, they're not happy with the fact that they're missing out on potential revenue this weekend. At the very least, there should be at least one game in each state. So you have one in WA and South Australia, one in Queensland, one in Victoria, one in New South Wales. I think that would be the perfect way to do it if you're going to have this opening round concept. The other part to it is the competitive imbalance of the opening round. And you mentioned the teams at the second week. But there's teams having their bye 3 weeks in or 4 weeks in. So they effectively get 2 byes through the season where other teams only get 1. And I know privately that clubs think that is a very significant imbalance because they get the ability to plan their season in a little block. So they say, all right, we've got 3 or 4 weeks, then we have a rest. And then we go again, and then we've got another 8 or 9 weeks, and then we've got another rest, which is the sides that don't play an opening round, they just don't get that luxury.
No, you're spot on with that. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens when we go to 19 teams. I think when we get to that point, I think the AFL should have a look at themselves and say, no, we don't need this. If we want to promote, let's promote the Thursday night, the Friday night in those markets. But you look at, Sydney and Brisbane, they sell out. They're selling out all the time. So there's no need really for that extra promotion. Maybe it's around the other sides and having the big clubs. I think that's what makes it work in those markets is have your Collingwoods and your Carltons and Essendon and Richmond, those sort of sides that actually do travel up and play in those markets because they bring a lot of benefits.
The other things that are going to be interesting to keep a look on, the new rule changes. Clearly the ruck rule has got a few ruckmen a little bit unsure of what to do and what not to do and how we give away a free kick. I think the last disposals worked fine through the pre-season, although we might get a few ticky touchwood ones where players try to do it like basketball style and trying to handball off people's shins and that type of stuff. I think the AFL will change that pretty quickly if that starts coming in too much. The stand rule, trying to get the game going, get the game in motion. What's been your early read from the footy you've seen?
I was lucky I played in the 2000s, Paps, because this is a game about running and speed. If you can't run, you can't play anymore. The AFL clearly have a directive to speed the game up. I love the last disposal rule. It takes the umpiring out of the equation, and we've seen over the last few years it frustrate a lot of fans. I think there's going to be a lot of free kicks paid early in the season, particularly to the rucks and also the stand rule, but they need to be consistent. They need to have a strong hardline approach with those rules and not deviate from that. And then I think by round 6, 7, 8 and 9, we'll start to get into a pretty exciting brand of footy where all the players know exactly what those rules are.
Looking forward to it, Hase. Great to have you on as part of the Footy Interchange. Let's get into the program. We're here thanks to SavvyWise, great supporters of us here on the Footy Interchange. AI platforms for accountants. Check them out, savvywise.com.au. But let's get straight to Queensland, because we think, as you said, Hase, off the top, that is where maybe a lot of the success is going to continue to come from in the AFL. Of course, the reigning premiers, the Brisbane Lions. We've got him back this year. Tom Rockliff joins us. Rocky, great to chat to you again, mate. Of course, 200 gamer in the AFL. Rockliff Finance for all your finance needs, mate. Great to have you back on the Footy Interchange.
No, thanks for having me. Good to be on for another year. And yeah, Brisbane got it done last year, and it's going to be hard to see him get beat this year as well, I would have thought.
You were right on it all year last year whenever we were chatting through the Brisbane Lions that, you know, they were just sort of timing their run and they got it done on grand final day. But footy in Queensland as a whole, it looks like it's just going to be a bumper year. You got two teams that look like they're going to be right up the top there. And as you said, for Brisbane, you know, they're a kick within already having a three-peat. They've won the last two flags. Do you think they'll get it done again?
Well, that's exactly right. You go back to that first grand final they lose, they have no Will Ashcroft, who goes on to win 2 Norm Smith medals if he plays there, potentially 3-timer. And even if you go back to the finish of that game, Lachie Neale, the ball goes back to him, he delivers it inside 50 to Joe Danaher instead of taking the advantage. They probably are setting up for a 4th grand final. And the scary thing for them is this is probably the best list they've had over that period of time. They've got stronger again. They've brought in Annabelle, who's couldn't get a game the other night as an emergency, who's a freak. He was number 1 in their GPS ratings all last summer. So previously, academy kid that trained. We've seen that he can play. And then you look at what wasn't there in last year's grand final. There's 6 or 7 that you can say are walk-up starters. Kitty Coleman's back. Link McCarthy's back as a half forward, half back. And then Jared Berry didn't play. Oscar Allen comes into the fold as a forward. Draper's there as well. They've got better, which, I mean, it's scary for the competition. They took on the Gold Coast Suns nearly a week ago now, not quite a week ago. Gold Coast were almost at full strength. Maybe you could argue two or three players weren't there, Ballard, Matty Reilly, and a couple that you could argue whether they're in the Suns' best 23 or not, and they took care of them quite comfortably. And then they've got another 7 to add to that are walk-up starts for the Lions. So it's a scary prospect for anyone this year. Are they going to go the season undefeated? Probably not. It's pretty rare to be up for that many weeks. But as we sit here on the 3rd of March on the season's eve, I think it's theirs to lose. I honestly can't see anyone in the competition when it comes to it on grand final day being able to go with them. They've got a balance of one of the best defence in the league. They've got their skipper, Harris Andrews, one of their 3 skippers at centre-half back who leads them really well. Then you've got Coleman to add to that. So they're going to be more aggressive with their ball movement. And Paul, I'm sure, would have played at the Gabba. He knows how quick that ball can spring back at you. They take on the corridor as good as anyone. Their midfield, their 3rd string midfield, you could argue, is better than anyone's in the competition, which is, I'm happy to have the debate with anyone about that. You've got Lachie Neale, you've got your starters, Dunkley, McCluggage, then you throw in Berry, the Ashcroft boys, then you throw in Zach Bailey. You've got other guys that can just continue to go through there. Jasper Fletcher, who I think will be an All-Australian inside midfielder one day. We haven't seen him there yet because there's just no position. So how do you stop that midfield? Because you got your first, then the second one comes on, then the third one comes on. It's like, well, there's just no way that anyone can compete with them. And then their forward line's as potent as anyone. I mentioned a few of those guys. Charlie Cameron was really good in the grand final. He had his moments last year. But their key post, Ty Gallup and Logan Morris are two of the most exciting prospects in the competition, and I was on them all last year. I think what Ty Gallop did in the prelim, Logan Morris did throughout the whole season as a second-year player to get a return of over 50 goals. It's a scary prospect for anyone, and I know I've probably spoken about it for 5 or 6 minutes, but I just don't see anyone in the competition being able to beat him.
You've sold me. Oscar Allen has gone to the football club. What's your expectations and the internal expectations on him in terms of the amount of goals if he is fit for the whole season?
Oh, I think a decent return would be 40. As we just spoke about, there's so many options when they go inside 50. All you really need from him is to compete, get it to ground level. The ground level players are going to keep the score for him anyway. So if he clunks one or two, I think if he plays 20 odd games and you get 40 odd goals out of him, that's a successful stint for him. They're probably hoping for more, but it's like, what does that forward line look like? Because you've got Gallop, you've got Morris, you've got Oscar Allen, you've got Eric Hipwood, you've got potentially Darcy Fort who can go down there. Like, I don't know what their best looks like, and they're probably going to experiment somewhat with that throughout the season to see what it actually looks like. But there's going to be pressure on for spots, and they've got great depth. And as I said, they've got the best list. So I think any return of 40 plus from Oscar Allen, if he plays 20 plus games, is a good return.
Rocky, we hate opening round over here because we're not a part of it. Do the northern states need it, and are you in favour of it?
I mean, it's an okay concept. I would love to see everyone play. I don't know why we don't. Everyone's been hanging all summer to see their team play. The one thing I will say is I think the AFL's got it right with the teams that are playing. So there's 8 teams that aren't playing this weekend. Of them, you would say 6 of them are the bottom 6. So I'd say you've got 10 of the best teams, potentially you've got 12 of the best teams there that we think, us experts, so-called experts, I would say the top 12 are going to play, and then you've got Fremantle aren't playing, who we expect to be thereabouts, and I think the Adelaide Crows are the other one that aren't playing, who you would expect to be there. And then the other bottom 6, everyone expects them probably not to play. So I think from a growth game, I think the game's grown extraordinary amounts in Queensland and New South Wales, and it doesn't really have a purpose in the fact that the NRL started last weekend in Vegas anyway. All the eyeballs were on that. So you've sort of missed the boat somewhat. Why not start the season with everyone up and going? And I know the AFL talk is that they won't change it and they're pretty pig-headed with things like that. But I think when you get to round 1 after we've been deprived of footy for 6 months, just play everyone. And you could probably also look at that and go, well, it's almost a waste of time having pre-season games. Let's start round 1 with no one having any pre-season games. Yes, you can play. You can organise your own, and you can have your own internal trials, and you can play against Brisbane, play the Gold Coast, and Freo play West Coast. But round 1, just hit the ground running, and we haven't seen any of them. I think there'll be real excitement around that.
Yeah, just get into it and get it going. You've pumped up Brisbane as expected, and as you're right to do after they were the reigning premiers last year. What about the team down the road? The Suns, they win a final last year. They take steps in the right direction. It's a pretty big year. Progress not always in the same direction. They can be a bit up and down. How do you think the Suns are going to go this year?
Well, it depends how these new guys fit, right? I think I remember back to my early days at the Brisbane Lions. So 2009 was my first year. They played finals for the first time in a number of years. Went away and had a massive off-season, brought in ex-guys, Brendan Favola, some stars of the competition from other clubs to bring him in. Brent Staker came over. There was about 6 or 7, and then we dropped off. So can these guys that they've brought in can certainly make them better, but it's how do they fit in? Ugelhagen, Petrarca and these guys, can they elevate? Can they fit into the team system of the Gold Coast? We'll get proof in the first 6 weeks whether that's functioning really well. I think they've added clear depth. I mean, they've got some really good stars. They've got a Brownlow medalist. They've got Petrarca, who's one of the best players in the competition. How do they fit them all into the midfield as well? We've seen Noah Anderson play a bit of time through the summer off half back. I think that their balance is really good. Their defence is really sound and set now. Ballard potentially comes back into that mix. Bodie Yulin, we've seen take steps. His brother apparently is, if not better, just as good. Sam Collins is a really good defender. So you've got the running backs in Noble and Reilly as well. So they're going to be hard to beat. I'd imagine they'll win most games at home. That goes a long way. They'll win games on the road. They're going to be, you would expect, I think I did my ladder a couple of days ago, and yeah, I have them top four. If everything clicks for them, that they're going to be hard to beat. They've got a really strong midfield. It's how that forward line can function. Question marks on King in the past about his ability to hit up, but he ends up kicking 60, 70 goals last year. So the output from him was really good. Can he get enough support? Can Long have as good year as what he did? Can Bailey Humphrey in that forward half? Is it him and Petrarca that swap on ball deep forward? So I think they've got enough weapons there. Ugle Hagen, can he get going? If they fit in those guys that they've brought in, they're going to be hard to beat as well. And what an exciting prospect for Queensland footy, the potential of a Gold Coast Suns and Brisbane Lions grand final.
The AFL be rubbing their hands together, seeing the Northern States doing well, or at least up in Queensland. Rocky, great to chat to you, mate. Great to have you back on board the Footy Interchange. People are chasing anything in finance. Check out Rockliff Finance, mate. We'll chat again next week.
Good on you. Thanks, guys.
Tom Rockliff there, he was great last year. He's always got a strong opinion, and he's got his finger right on all the news coming out of Queensland. Mate, I'm not surprised that Brisbane are dominating the way they are. I've been telling everybody over the last couple of years that this was coming because of the academy advantages that they've had, the father-son advantages that they've had, and then what they've been able to do with free agency, and the teams have been able to, the players have been able to get to their team as well. They've had a lot of extra advantages, I reckon, on the competition, Brisbane, but they've made the most of the rules that were in place. So that's not their fault. I think it's more of the AFL allowing this to happen over the last little while. But you look at their young players coming through. Yes, they've got some really great experienced players, but they are set up for a period of sustained success, and they're coming off the back of 2 flags.
And you look at some of the other teams that will start to challenge, like Fremantle and Adelaide, but sometimes it's about timing. And it might be their time, but you've got this other juggernaut that might be there for another 3 to 5 years. And there's improvement in Morris. There's improvement in Wilmot. I think she's going to be a superstar. The Ashcrofts are still young. Fletcher is an absolute superstar in waiting. Bailey, I think this year shows that he is that player forward of centre that can get it done. So I think Rocky's right. He's excited. He's up and about. There's no doubt about that. But I think it is the grand final. Gold Coast are in the same boat. Like, how did Fremantle beat Gold Coast when they couldn't beat them here on their home deck with a really exciting run in? Couldn't get it done. And they bring in Petrarca, Ugle Hagen. There's picks 1 and 2. Leo Lombard showed on the weekend. He's going to be good for Gold Coast. Ballard back. And there's a number of younger players that can improve for them in the front half, including Bailey Humphrey, I think, who becomes like Zach Bailey, this year for the Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, you asked about Oscar Allen before, how many goals he can kick. I think the service he's going to get this year from the midfield from Brisbane is going to be, the inside 50 opportunity is going to be through the roof compared to what he's had.
But what a luxury to have Oscar Allen there and not really requiring a big output from him. They've got it covered. They've done that the last 2-3 years. He's just cream on the crop. We've got also Sam Draper to come in at some stage and take over and become a better ruckman than what they've had in that part of the ground in recent years.
Well, Oscar Allen playing for Brisbane, kicking goals in the forward line might be a tough watch for West Coast fans as we bring in Eliza Reilly from Code Sports to look at everything happening in the West. Eliza, you're on the road, ready to go, out there chasing down whatever news is going around today. But Eagles fans will be thinking, oh, here we go again.
Yeah, absolutely. And welcome, Hayes. Big upgrade on Will Schofield. So glad to have you on the pod this year. But yeah, on the road, searching around for more excuses from West Coasters doing it there in super performance on Sunday. But I think, the clubs tried to play it down. McQualter said in his post-game press conference that there was obviously stats and areas of the game which they felt like they dominated and were ahead in. But I think the most disappointing part for West Coast fans would have been the skills, especially in that first quarter, just simple missed kicks, drop marks. Liam Baker, uncontested chest mark, and he drops it, then fumbles it on the ground as he's trying to pick it up. It was just really hard to watch, and West Coast fans up in the stands around us where we were sitting were groaning and, going, oh, God, this is Groundhog Day, here we go again. So, I mean, the proof will be in the pudding come round one as to whether it was maybe, a sign of what was to come or a bit of a overreaction to a preseason game, which we often like to do. But it was, hard to imagine the Eagles looking any worse than what they did on the weekend.
A couple of guys I want to ask about. Tim Kelly, who has a slight hamstring concern at the moment, but Elijah Hewitt, a lot invested in this kid. And in year 4, West Coast would have been hoping he was going to be a big part of their plans. Where are those two at?
Yeah, with Elijah, he obviously had a calf setback during the pre-season, and for someone who's a power athlete like him, any sort of soft tissue niggles are going to be a bit harder to overcome and a bit harder to get back to your absolute best. And the best we know of Elijah is that explosive, powerful midfield athlete. So he, by the sounds of things, played some waffle minutes on the weekend, got through, but he's someone who the Eagles feel like they might need to get a bit more game time into before they send him back into the seniors, because when that calf initially happened, we were told it was a knock to his calf. But obviously it was a little bit more than that to not see him have played either pre-season game so far, aside from that last quarter of the game against Fremantle in match simulation. So Tim Kelly as well, unfortunate, given he was probably one of the club's better performers in that game against Fremantle, to go down with a little hamstring setback. So we'll see where he's at sort of by the end of this week in bouts at training as to whether he could get up for round one, because they're going to need that experience in the midfield.
What about Fremantle? 3 rucks, don't go into 2. Longmuir on record saying it will only be 2. Who do you think they'll be?
Yeah, from the team that everyone says can't play 2 rucks. So I was thinking, could they play 3? Could they just really throw a spanner in the works and blow us all out of the water? But yeah, as you said, JL on the weekend, and we asked him about it post-game, and he said absolutely, given the speed of the game, the pace of the game in those early rounds of the season, that it'll only be 2. And at the moment, it looks like Mason Cox is making a genuine charge to be there round 1 based on how he played on the weekend. And attended 60 sort of hit-outs, 130 odd of them, was a presence sort of in the forward line and around the ground with his marking. So it was a sort of bizarre sight to see him in purple initially, but he's, very much proven that he's not just come over here to play in the waffle and to toil away at Peel Thunder. So Sean Darcy, given he has had an interrupted pre-season with those soft tissue concerns, I think he would be starting to worry a little bit about his place leading into round 1. Luke Jackson's locked in, even though he is more going to be that hybrid midfielder this year with a few ruck minutes here and there. But when it comes to a toss-up between Sean Darcy and Mason Cox, it's maybe not as much difference as we thought there would be at the start of pre-season, given that he has had yet another sort of interrupted summer.
The depth at Fremantle's the thing that I think they're hoping will take them to the next level, that competition for spots and the fight, particularly in the midfield for minutes. I'm running out of ways already to describe Murphy Reid and talk him up, given how good he was in the pre-season, Eliza. But he looks like he's certainly going to be in that rotation a lot more this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin sort of said on the weekend that, they had one sort of plan and one sort of thought about how they could use him this year, but his form in the pre-season has sort of changed that in the way he's been so dominant when he has gone into the midfield and been one of their better performers. And he just adds that sort of X factor and class, which, as much as we love that combination of Sarong, Brayshaw and Young, there is a few similarities between all 3 of those players, whereas Murphy Reid brings something completely different that neither of them offer. And it was interesting the week before to sort of hear JL talk about how he loves what Murphy's doing, but the creativity, he's sometimes encouraging him to swim between the flags, was I think his quote, and not try and do the Mercuro every time he gets the footy. Whereas, if I was sitting on the beach and there was a few lifeguards in the area, I would be swimming outside the flags if I knew that Murphy Reid was going to be a chance to do something special. Leave Sarong, Brayshaw and Young to be the lifesavers.
Eliza, when it's all said and done, career's over, who has the better career out of the Reids here in the West?
Oh, it's very tough. You put me on the spot there, but I think that Harley is still probably going to have the edge when all is said and done. Murphy's obviously having a terrific start to his career, but Harley's been the best player in Australia for his age in every age group moving up the ranks, and he's obviously had a little bit of a mistake and a little bit of a down season early in his year, but he's learnt from that, and I think when West Coast come good, he will be very much the reason that the Eagles are back in premiership contention in a few years' time.
And Archer Reid just disappointed, didn't even get a mention in that conversation. Eliza, thank you very much. Looking forward to chatting to you through the year.
Thanks, guys.
Eliza Reilly there from Code Sports. Knows everything that's going on, one of the best newsbreakers in the business. Hayes, you're a Fremantle great. Every year, Fremantle fans, it's the meme that goes around, isn't it? That they get hope, you get let down again, and you get your hope back and you start to build up. Where are they going this year? What What are they realistically looking at? Are they a genuine premiership contender?
They're going big, Paps. Every piece of the puzzle is there now. Solid back line. Maybe need another halfback to really step up and support Jordan Clark. But the midfield, talked about Brisbane's midfield, I think Fremantle's is right up there. And they've got a lot of players that are very different. They're not just same. They've got Bolton that can go through there, Murphy, Reid. They've got the Jackson style that they can use through the midfield as well. And their forward line now with the three dominant key forwards. Hopefully they can get Sam Switkowski through the season. I think he's so important for them in the front half. But all the pieces are there for them to make a big run at it. The question is, it's just about how good is this Brisbane side? How do they get past them when they are a dynasty team going for 3 in a row? And as Rocky said, could be better. Big discussion point, I reckon, over the next 2 weeks is the rucks for Freo. Who's it going to be? I'm a Jackson fan. I think Jackson, as a pure ruckman, the advantage Fremantle have is that he's so much fitter, and he can get around the ground better than all those other rucks. His follow-up work is sensational, but Justin Longman has always been a coach that loves hit-outs to advantage. Right now, with the new rules coming in, I think it favours Cox because of his height. Sean Darcy, he's been that immovable ruckman that just stands there, gets across the line. He won't be able to do that, and I think Justin needs to send a message to his whole squad, and that goes to Luke Ryan, that goes to, it might be Switkowski, who's had some injury concerns. There's no rush to get them in the side. Get them back in when they're playing well, fully fit and firing, and really create competition for spots.
Well, given we're talking about the rucks and the ruck rules, it's probably the perfect time to head to New South Wales and check in with our rucking expert in Cal Sinclair, of course, a ruck for West Coast and the Sydney Swans. He's our expert in New South Wales, which we'll talk about the Swans and the Giants in a second. Cal, great to have you back on the Footy Interchange, mate. Looking forward to talking footy with you this year. What have you made of the changes to the ruck rules? How do you think you would have gone with the differences there and some of the tactics that some of the ruckmen have tried to pull out already?
I think it's a great rule. I think one thing that the AFL do. Actually, I will stand corrected, mate. You said ruckman. I'll say backup ruckman. So that's the one thing that I've got to my name. But I think it's actually great. I think you probably saw over the last couple of years, they took the real tradition out of the game of seeing these great spectacles of guys actually using their leap to their advantages. Like you saw Brodie Grundy, Sean Darcy, as Paul, you just mentioned, Max Gawn's the one. It just became a crossing the line exercise and basically a basketball ball up, which I think is a real shame. I still believe you should be able to, I guess, do that. But they do have to bring back the jump at some point in time. And look, the durability of ruckman now, I think, is going to go backwards a little bit. I think you saw Max Gawn and Heath Grundy kind of reinvigorate themselves because you're not jumping 20 or 30 times a game. So your durability and your recovery is a lot better when you're playing that way, but not anymore.
Cal, when you went to the Sydney Swans, Buddy Franklin was there. You two were the biggest recruits over the last decade at the Swans. We've had another one with Charlie Curnow coming into New South Wales. How has he been received and how does it compare to the Buddy factor?
Well, I don't know if I'm in that category, Paul, but thank you for your kind words. But he's featured so much on the Swans social media, so he better get a kick this year. But from what all I'm saying from the players and I guess the word around town is that he's fitted in beautifully. Look, the reality is he is what they need. It's probably, if they can get 45, 50 plus goals out of him this year, I think that's actually a pretty good return. You've got to remember they've actually got a pretty dynamic forward line already. They've got a fair bit of depth now in that key forward department. So you've got Logan McDonald there, Hayden McLean, pinch hitters in the ruck, and now he's got to find himself down there playing a little bit more forward because Grundy's fit and healthy. Joel Amati is an interesting one. So I don't know, Paul. I think the reality is Charlie's been employed to be the main man, but he's going to have to gel with a lot of these guys. And I think at the moment there'll be a selection headache for that kind of second and third tall.
When you look at a few of the other teams in contention, the improvement comes from the younger players. Probably a bit different with Sydney. They've got some players that have been around for a while that the microscope is going to be firmly on.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think on that, everyone's saying, they're going to be, I guess, the team that's going to bolter this year. But last year, they were just, to be quite frank, they were pretty unlucky with injury. They just could not get a team on the park for probably the first 15 or 16 rounds, and they probably just left their run too late. But no, there is a fair bit of microscope on players this year. I think Callum Mills got elected as captain, I think, for the 4th or 5th year in a row, which is obviously a great choice, but he actually hasn't been able to, I guess, transform that into some good football. Yes, he's had some injury concerns, but I think it is a really, really big year for him, particularly if he wants to secure his captaincy, I think, beyond this year. Isaac Heaney is waiting in the wings, but I think Callum, how he gels into that midfield, not too sure. The reality is Heaney, Warner and Goulden are going to face the first ball. But I think with Callum, what he does have is he's quite versatile. So he can play that defence role, which he did for the first half of his career. But McLean and Amadi and McDonald, I don't know beyond 2026, guys, if one of those guys will be at the Swans. Curno's obviously going to be there. You can't play all four. Amadi's interesting. I think he needs to get his body right. Not sure if he can kind of handle it outside of the MCG. His inconsistency with his body's been a real challenge for him. But Hayden McLean's the interesting one for me. He'll be pinch hitting in the ruck. Can he kind of, play with Curnow and Grundy in the same side? And Logan McDonald, as you guys would know, he's got the WA factor. So all he needs to do is play probably 2 or 3 good games, and you guys will pay him $1 million over there.
The Swans last year, as you mentioned, struggled with injury. This year, it's the Giants that look so cruelled already, which might get their crack at a flag. You're stopping it before it even gets started, really. What's your early read on GWS? They've been desperately unlucky so far.
Yeah, have. I just took a look at their side a little bit earlier today, and they've got Jack Riccardi in the ruck, which, don't get me wrong, Jack's obviously been a great serviceman and clubman for that club, but that's probably an example of, going into round one, they probably wouldn't have thought Jack would be the number one ruckman going into this season. Briggs is obviously a little bit unlucky. You've got Braden Pruce, who's, 250 centimetres running around in the VFL for Williamstown. So I'm pretty confident they would love him back in the side these days. But Brent Daniels is the one for me. I think if this guy was playing for a Western Australian or a Victorian club, you'd be talking about him as one of the best small forwards in the competition. I just think that he does not get the credit or kudos he deserves. He's a match winner. He penetrates you on the scoreboard, absolutely hurts you moving forward. But just unlucky again with injury and that hamstring. I think, for him, need to get him back out in the park because I really feel like he's an important clog. But the one for me, guys, is Aaron Cadman. Jesse Hogan, he's had an amazing couple of seasons, but the reality is he's in his 30s now, and they just can't rely on him to get their 60-plus goals. They probably need 40 to 50 from Aaron Cadman. And if those two guys can remain healthy and the supply to them is, I guess, consistent, they'll be hard to beat. But, I think the injuries are going to be the issue for them. But at the end of the day, the games aren't won now. They're won at the back end of, June, July, August and September.
And we saw the Giants documentary come out and Adam Kingsley give a fair old-fashioned spray. What did you make of that? What was the best spray you ever copped as well on the way through?
The best spray I ever copped was it was extremely personal and definitely not suitable for to be broadcasted to the masses. But mate, I didn't mind. I wasn't quite sure who that game was against, but I thought what was interesting in that spray is he went hard at all the leaders. I think Green, Cornelio and Kelly were the 3 guys that copped that. So I thought that was really interesting, a great sign of, I guess, don't know if a great sign of leadership is the right term, but you got to set your standard from the top. But I'm looking forward to who they target next year. I do know that, John Longmire in the coach's box, I'm not too sure if they want to broadcast those ones either, but I'm fair to say I was on the receiving end of those a few times.
Brilliant stuff, mate. Great to chat some footy in New South Wales. Enjoy opening round. We'll chat again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Cal Sinclair there, of course, former ruck for West Coast and Sydney. Hase, you got a spray that springs to mind from a particular coach?
I do. It's great to see that it's still there. Like we thought that with political correctness it was going out, but I still think it's a tool for coaches. Yeah, in my second year, so I had a good first year. Second year, I came back a bit overweight and we lost by about 110 points to Carlton in the pre-season. And Damien Drum went around to everybody and he got to me and he goes, "Hase, you're fat, you're lazy, and you're a big head." So he got me between the eyes. He was spot on at the time because I got caught up in a good first season, went to Melbourne at the end of that season. You just get caught up with life and how well you think you're going. And, it was a big, rude awakening for me at the start of the next season. And unfortunately, it was too late because I'd had a pretty poor pre-season up to that point. My second year was pretty poor.
How do you react in that moment? Are you just wanting the ground to swallow you up and hide? Or is it a test guess like they're looking at how you respond to it and come back.
Yeah, I think they pick and choose who they think can handle it. I could handle it at that particular stage, and it was what I needed. But I do remember after that we flew back on the plane. I was at the airport, and everyone was taking the escalators, and I was like, nah, I can't be doing that. I've got to go extra yards. I'm going to actually walk and go up the stairs instead of the automatic escalators that played a part with it. But, yeah, great to see that coaches still have that as part of their weaponry.
Extra 1%ers. I like it. The Footy Interchange, we're here thanks to SavvyWise as we head now to Victoria, who have just flexed their muscle again over there, the Vics. They said, we're not part of opening round, so we're just going to shoehorn a game in at the MCG on a Sunday night. Why not? Drew Jones is with us. Very busy time of the year for Drewy, of course, from Fox Sports. You can check him out on AFL Tonight, which is back. But his passion project is, of course, GOAT Fantasy, where you need to find all of your fantasy news. We'll talk about that in a sec, Drew, because I know it's a very important time of the year for you with people drafting and getting ready for the start of the season. But footy's upon us. The AFL are excited about opening round, and lo and behold, there's a game at the MCG, which goes completely against why we had opening round in the first place.
Well, this is footy heartland, boys, as we know. We've got to have a game here at Victoria. That's what, opening round was supposed to be about the northern states, but no, we'll be here at the G Sunday night. Take aside the politics of it. How about going to Albert Park and watching Oscar Piastri punch in, hopefully first podium and maybe first win for an Australian in the Aussie Grand Prix, and then heading straight to the MCG and watching Nasiah the Messiah tear apart Collingwood. That sounds like a pretty reasonable Sunday afternoon, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Are you buying the St Kilda story?
I've said this a few times. I'm all in on the Saints. And I still believe that Ross Lyon has it as a coach. And I think he's now starting to get the pieces in place that he needs. So I'm tipping them for the top 6, maybe even top 4. I think they're the big riser of this year. And I can't wait for Sunday night because I think the Saints are going to show us just how good they're going to be. I think Flanders was a savvy investment for them. He'll be good through the midfield, and these new ruck rules really suit TDK. But I did want to talk about opening round with you just briefly because I just think yesterday more than ever, it was so stark, the glitz and glamour of Vegas against the sort of very reserved start for the AFL, just at Sydney Town Hall, a couple of injured players just doing a photo shoot. There wasn't a lot of hype around it, and it will build as the week goes on. But I still just think we've just got this a little bit off, and there's just no reason why Adelaide and Perth shouldn't be involved in opening round as like football around the country returns. Yes, make these marquee games early in the round in the northern states if that's what you want to do. But Adelaide, Perth should be involved in this. I like the one game at the G on Sunday night, but for the rest of the weekend, it should be all about the other states. And I think that's where we should land for opening round. Whether we get there remains to be seen.
How about we just have a round called round 1? We go back to how it was where everybody gets a chance to play. I want to ask about the Blues. Big night. Big focus Thursday night for them. The pressure building on Michael Voss. Is he going to be the story this year from a coaching perspective?
Well, he's the most under pressure coach going into the season, and that is partly because of his contract status. The fact they backed him in to see out his deal but didn't offer him another year means that straight away the spotlight was always going to be on him. We're all in navy blue, by the way, aren't we? Are we supporting the Blues come Thursday night? We're looking good.
Outfits.
For those who are listening to the podcast. Sorry, you're not on a visual medium, but we're all in the navy blue today. But so there's a lot of hope for them with Jagger Smith, who could well win the Rising Star and have a huge first year on the evidence that we've seen through the preseason. Harry Dean is going to be exceptional for them right away down back as sort of the next man next to Jacob Wiedering. And they've probably recruited a few pretty reliable soldiers in Will Hayward and Ben Ainsworth. Campbell Chesser will be good. There might be some others that I've missed, Ollie Florent, but they've lost their sort of their joker, their ace. Like not having Charlie Curnow as a dual Coleman medalist is clearly going to affect their dynamicism in the front half of the field. So the big question is, what does it take for Michael Voss to get another contract? What does he need to achieve with this Carlton team? Is it a pub test? Is it the look and the feel of how they play? Is it a wins situation? Do they need to make at least the wild card, top 10? Are they capable of doing that? Is he being set up to succeed? These are all really valid questions about the Blues. Ultimately, from a Carlton perspective, the hierarchy get another look at Michael Voss? Could he be the man to sort of supercharge a little rebuild here? We know they've got Cody Walker coming in. Some prospects are in their future, but can they be good enough to recharge on the run and see enough, quality coaching from Michael Voss? That's the big question going into the year.
You spend a lot of time on the road, Drew, getting around to all the clubs through the pre-season. Which Victorian side do you think is the one that's going to have the strongest season? Is it the Cats again? Can they continue to dominate? Is it Hawthorn who just find that extra gear and make it to a grand final this year? Is it the Saints? Is it another team that you think can go well?
My power rankings would be Geelong, because you just can't ever tip against them or write them off. And then I think St Kilda are the next best. Hawthorn just slot in third for me in terms of the hierarchy in Victoria. But I think this is such a great test for Sam Mitchell's coaching, because clearly their midfield is a bit thin. You take out Warple, Will Day's out for the first half of the year. We might not see Jai Newcomb due to suspension on Saturday against the Giants. They weren't able to recruit the midfield that they needed in Zach Merritt. Can they find another way? Is it Josh Weddle who comes out of the box as an inside midfielder? Is it Connor McDonald who makes that step up from half forward? Does Nick Watson spend more time there and become, a really complete player and one of the stars of the comp? Like, what can Mitchell sort of pull out of his bag of tricks? Because everywhere around the field, they're really well stocked. It's just the midfield is a big test for them. So I think Hawthorn are one of the most intriguing sides. And then you've got how much can the Bulldogs climb? Clearly, they underachieved last season, the best ninth place team ever. Can they find another gear? Can Sam Darcy win the Coleman? Can Luke Beveridge, find a renaissance in his coaching tenure?
Yeah, and then you look at the other side of things, what happens with Collingwood and Melbourne and Essendon, North Melbourne, those types of teams which we're not sure about how they're going to go.
Yeah. Well, this is the hard thing about our chat each week, is because we've got so many teams to talk about. How do we fit it all in? I mean, everyone expects Collingwood to slide, and they've had a pretty poor season, I think, injury-wise, from the outside looking in. Interesting to hear Nick Dacos on AFL Tonight last night. He said they've actually, their preseason loads have been really high. So the injury toll hasn't been a massive surprise for them, because they're trying to get themselves into a really good spot to start the season strongly. Very interested to see how that manifests itself on Sunday night. Melbourne, I like what they've done in terms of their list management, and I like Stephen King, but big unknown as to how they actually look on field.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting watch around some of those teams, which we'll discuss over the coming weeks. And I know that you are well and truly in the midst of getting ready for a new fantasy football season. Goat Fantasy, if people want all the latest news and the inside words to help them out, if you're still about to do your draft, or if you're looking to make some of those additions to your side. What have you got new for us this year, Drew?
Okay, so I just did the top 50, sort of our watch list for all the players that you want to be keeping an eye on through the preseason and then over opening round as well, as you eventually land on your team. I just wanted to talk about one of those players specifically. I spoke to him actually this morning, Archie Roberts, who's a great young player at Essendon and has been given this extra responsibility with no Nick Martin in the team. I'm not going to say that it's the Nick Martin role, but they need a freewheeling creative player who's got a really good tank and good skills. Archie Roberts fits that mould. And he doesn't have an early buy because they're not playing in opening round. So in your draft leagues and in your salary cap teams across all your different formats, I think Archie Roberts is one worth looking at, with extra midfield time and also half back, which is a great place to rack up extra points in fantasy. And I just wanted to bring in GOAT mailbag just really quickly. So I put it out to some people on Twitter to ask a question which would feature on the podcast. And I think this is a really interesting one from Forrest, whose handle is Sexy Sam Flanders, so I think Flanders would be in his side. He says, does the possibility of Nasiah Wanganeen-Mullera getting triple position status alter our views on starting him? So for context, Nasiah Wanganeen-Mullera available as a defender in fantasy, but he's been playing forward and midfield. I love the idea of the flexibility of having Nasiah available as a forward, a mid and a back eventually, if those position changes all work out. He's very expensive, but he is arguably the most exciting player in the AFL. So Nasiah Wanganeen-Mullera, I think, is going to be a have in fantasy sooner rather than later.
Have we ever had a triple position player before in AFL fantasy?
It's only come in this season, so it's a totally new concept. So someone like Luke Jackson, potentially, if he plays enough forward time as well as midfield time and ruck time, could end up with 3 positions. But there's not many players that will be able to pull it off, but Nasai might be one of them.
Throw all the handles at us, mate, where people can check it out on Goat Fantasy.
Yeah, it's at Goat Fantasy News on Twitter, Instagram, and then the podcast is probably where it's at. You can download it. They're only short podcasts, so you can listen on the drive home or quick trip down to the cafe in the morning. But there's lots of content. It's all as it happens. Big news breaks in the fantasy world. You'll hear it on Goat Fantasy.
Really important this time. This is where premierships are won, Drew. Drafting and getting your team right at the start.
That's right. A lot of work over this 2 weeks. It's like the busiest 2 weeks of the year for us people in the footy media as we prepare for the season. But then for fantasy coaches, getting those drafts right, getting those teams right, sets up your whole winter.
Brilliant stuff, mate. Thanks very much. Looking forward to chatting to you through the year. Drew Jones there from Goat Fantasy, also AFL Tonight, Fox Footy.
Do you play? Are you a super coacher or AFL fantasy?
AFL fantasy. I'm in one draft league with some mates, and we did a full reset this year, so I went back to basics because it was a keeper league for a few years. I used to do it a lot more, but I made the personal decision to step back from it and not take as much interest in it because I didn't want to be calling games and trying to follow the bloke that I want him to get the footy. So I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm just going to take a step back, and we don't really play for too much cash or anything. So I'm not too caught up in it. So it's a bit more of a casual, fun thing, just more for the group chat banter really than anything else.
We've got a Hasleby family competition, so about 16 of us that play every single week. Pretty exciting, and even mum and dad put a team together, so there's a lot of competition on the line. Just going through the heartland, he talked about the Victorian teams. How many do you think will be inside the top 8? Not the top 10, the top 8, given that, it's expected that we're going to have probably most of those teams in the northern markets. Adelaide, who knows what Port Adelaide are going to do, and Fremantle, they could occupy a few of those spots.
It's going to be hard, isn't it, to fit everyone in, and that's why the top 10 works a bit better this year. What do you think? The ones I probably mentioned, Geelong, Hawthorn and St Kilda. Actually, I'll probably put the Bulldogs ahead of St Kilda.
Yep.
Probably the Bulldogs. Geelong, Hawthorn, the Bulldogs are my 3 that I think can definitely make the top 8. And then the Saints maybe the top 10, just because they're so unknown right now. I think the Bulldogs could be anything. I mean, the list they've got there, if they have Sam Darcy fit for the whole year, if he kicks 50-plus goals, then they're right in position, aren't they, to be pushing even for a top 4 type spot.
Do you have Sydney and GWS and Adelaide in your top 8?
Not sure about the Giants just because of their injuries now. I think if they hadn't lost someone like a Tom Green, Josh Kelly's out for most of the year, and all the other ones that they've got, probably not the Giants for me, unfortunately. Crows definitely, and Sydney probably. So I haven't actually done my top 8. I'm just trying to throw all the teams in there instead.
It's starting on Thursday. Pressure on Michael Voss.
Yeah.
Alistair Clarkson, why does he escape the scrutiny? For me, they're underperforming, and I'm concerned again. I think looking at their pre-season, albeit they beat Collingwood by 1 point, but Collingwood rested a lot of their senior players. I think they'll be down there with West Coast and Richmond once again, and that would be almost 7 or 8 years. And he's had plenty of time to do something with this squad, and he hasn't yet.
I think it's starting to come a bit more now, isn't it? That scrutiny on the Kangaroos, because they've had that number of years with those high draft picks and waiting for the wheel to turn.
But has it turned into much, perhaps, their high draft picks? I still look through and I go, there's some holes in their forward line.
Yep.
There's a lot of holes in their defence. It just hasn't been a build that's been built on having all the areas of the ground covered.
Well, the problem is, unlike some of those other sides that have been able to rebuild, they haven't been able to get the free agents in to top up their list, I don't think, North Melbourne. So it's been a full-on rebuild for them trying to bring in those younger guys, which takes a long time, and you need to make sure that they're all nailed. I think they've got some great talent. Clearly, Harry Sheasel's excellent. You're waiting to see McKercher come on, who's had some injury issues, as has Wardlaw is the other one who's so important to them, who's had some injury issues. So we hope that they can start taking some steps in the right direction.
You know, they had a good crack at Jack Viney over the break. Imagine that, going and paying for him. And then, of course, he's out injured at the moment. I thought it was a crazy call. They've got Luke Parker, they've got Simpkin. They didn't need that sort of player. They need some really good defenders and some better small forwards and key forwards to help out Nick Larkey.
So they have got some free agents in, but the ones I'm talking about are those those A
A-graders.
graders that they want to get in at, big money, which they had a good crack at, a few of them. We will continue to talk, I'm sure, a lot about North Melbourne this year as we go through. But let's head to South Australia right now, because Dom Cassisi joined us, who's a very good addition to the Footy Interchange last year. Of course, 200 gamer with the power, premiership player, captain as well, and he joins us right now. Dom, brilliant to have you, mate. I reckon you and Hase would have crossed paths a fair bit, given you're from Western Australia back in the day.
Yeah, you're right. East Freo boys as well, which is good. So, mate, it's good to be involved again this year. It was good fun last year.
Great to have you back. And footy in South Australia, let's start with your old side, because I got to see them firsthand against West Coast on the weekend, and it felt like the team was built in the same image as their coach, with their aggression that they had to the contest under Josh Carr against the Eagles. It was super impressive. What are you expecting from the Power this year?
Yeah, look, it's hard to know what to expect. They probably didn't they didn't go to the trade really, and attack that hard. So they're sort of going in with a similar sort of list from the previous year. But there's a lot of unknown in terms of upside with a fresh coach, fresh ideas. And like you say, on the weekend, it was pretty impressive. I mean, I guess the foundation that you need for any team is, to hunt the footy and be good around the contest. They were definitely that on the weekend. I think Adelaide the week before, they were a little bit hot and cold in that area. But then we got to see the rest of their game style sort of unfold under what Josh is trying to execute.
I love their ball movement, the way that they were able to turn the ball over with that sort of pressure, but their inside 50 efficiency, first class. And they have some of those midfielders that are just good at taking it off the line. We know Butters is super at that, but also Rosie spending a bit more time through the midfield. Is that something that we're going to see this year?
Yeah, I reckon. I mean, it's hard not to throw him in there a bit more. I mean, you saw a good reminder on the weekend of what he's like in the midfield. But Hase, I agree with you. Like, their ball movement, I reckon that's probably the biggest thing that's changed from last year. I don't know if you remember, particularly probably the first 5 or 6 rounds last year, Port Adelaide, once they got the ball back off the oppo, it was play this really high octane handball game, which was sort of make it up via hands and flying blind. And you could just see up the ground, it was a nightmare for the forwards, because they'd be out leading and then there'd be another handball. And then you can get out of position pretty quick. Whereas what I saw on the weekend, and I think Carri's blueprint is they've got a bit more of that modern style of defending, like more of a zone defense rather than man on man. And then you're right, then they've got a bit more energy, it seemed, in offense, because they have sort of had that team defense, whereas last year it was very different under Ken. It was almost like last year they were defending hard, but then when they got the ball, they didn't have any energy left in the tank to go offensively really hard. So, yes, the game on the weekend it looked calculated. It looked like the players knew where they wanted to go. They looked well drilled, and it looked like there was always an option there. It looked like there was always an easy option just on that angle kick, which sort of cut through West Coast pretty easily in the end.
They've got some good kickers at half back, but I'm concerned about their key defenders. Until I saw Todd Marshall, I thought he was okay. Can that change in position work for Port Adelaide this year?
I think it can. I mean, I agree with you highly as well. I think the concern for Port Adelaide is that, like, defending from 0 to 30 out, they look really shaky against West Coast in that space. Toddy Marshall, he's more gone back there because of his footy smarts. He's got a beautiful kick, and we saw that. I don't know if you want Toddy Marshall at this stage. That might come with a bit more backline craft, but I don't think you'd want him one out in the goal square on a key forward, and that's not really his role. But I just saw. I just think they just don't look too settled yet. I don't reckon with their key defenders. Like, obviously they've given Ram a really good goal at the first 2 rounds. Radagalia hasn't been out there yet. Zerk Thatcher hasn't been out there yet. But obviously there's Alir as well. So I just saw West Coast, some of their tools, take some easy marks, 0 to 30 out, and against the better teams, that I can see them just really attacking Port Adelaide in that space, and they might be able to get hold of them a bit.
So has your opinion changed on where you think Port can finish this year off the back of that game on the weekend? I know it was against West Coast, but more about the method and the pressure that they brought in that game.
Yeah, look, if they were going to bring that sort of pressure, and they bring that pressure around the footy, and then they've got some serious A-grade talent around the ball. So, but once you against the better teams, you need a little bit more than that too, though. So, look, I think if Port this year, after not adding too much to their list, I think if they were around 7th, at best, and then they could be anywhere 11th or 12th. Now, hopefully it's more than they're better than that, but I think realistically with where they're at, they've been contending for many years, and I think they're just going to go through that building bit now of trying to stabilise the team and then look to add some more father. I think there's some academy players next year and some father-sons. So I think if they can fit in that range, particularly if they finish 7th to 10th, that'll be a good year for them.
And the Crows, on the flip side to that, obviously minor premiers last year, as all the Port fans will remind them constantly, went out of the finals in those 2 straight games. A few injury concerns to start this season, so they're not exactly flying to start the year.
No, they're not flying. They have had, obviously, Rankin's out for the first few. And then Saligo, who I think he's an important player, he's underrated for them. He's got a bit of a heart issue at the moment. Phil Thorpe obviously missed on the weekend. So they have had a bit of an interrupted pre-season. And I guess you just can't quantify the impact of going into a season like they did after last year with expectation now. I think that changes the ball game a little bit too. You feel a bit more pressure. If you drop the first game or two, it seems like it's a long way to get back to where you were last year. So I think in terms of their progression and where they want to head, I reckon the start of this season is massive for Crows. If they wouldn't want to drop the first game or two, because then it just feels like it's a long way back to be able to make up some ground. But they've got to deal with that expectation now because they had such a great year last year. Their list is in a beautiful spot in terms of their age profile, games played. They've got some serious talent, so they've got to try and put it together.
Brilliant stuff, Tom. Great to chat to you, mate. Looking forward to following the fortunes of the 2 Adelaide teams across the season, and a bit like those in Western Australia, just have to wait an extra week before a game of footy gets to be played for either of them with this ridiculous opening round.
Yeah, I know. It's a mess. People are jumping out of their skin to watch a bit of footy. The local teams have just got to wait a little bit. So anyway, look, at least we can chuck it on. First game's Thursday night, is that right?
Yep.
So the season's here finally, so we can look forward to it.
Great
look
stuff.
forward to having a bit of fun during the year, boys.
Certainly will, mate. Thanks so much.
Thanks. See you, Paps. See you, Hase.
Tom Cassisi, our expert in South Australia, of course, former Port Adelaide player, Hase.
Yeah, they can go a long way, the Adelaide Crows. I think they showed last year they're good enough. Disappointing final series, but Isaac Rankin, so important. He's a 3 or 4 goal influencing player for mine. And Phil Thorpe, if he can keep himself fit, I think he could be one that could win the Coleman medal this year. Dan Curtin, a big loss. He's the one that could have given them some flexibility. But Luke Pedler, another one that I'm expecting just to step up a little bit this year and help them out through the midfield.
We'll follow the fortunes of the South Australian teams really closely here on the Footy Interchange. The other thing we do each week, Hase, is check in with Steve Gravina from Frontrunner Physiotherapy, who is our expert on all things injury. Steve, great to chat to you again, mate. Good to have you back because I learnt a hell of a lot with you in this segment last season. And I think given this pre-season, again, we've seen so many injuries already, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been another chaotic year, mate, from a pre-season point of view. I think the push of the Players Association to give the players so much time off has been a bit of downside with the injury rates that we're seeing here. Then the playing groups have got a very finite time to get themselves ready. The coaches are having to really push match sim early, and the intensities just ramp up so quick. So it's no surprise we're seeing big injuries and big injuries to key players across pre-season. So GWS have been hit pretty hard, obviously, with an ACL and a number of hammies. Adelaide have had Isaac Rankin with a hammy, and across the board we're seeing a fair few. And then you throw in a state game where you got a few players that are going to be underprepared who are the stars in the competition. And we're seeing guys that are pulling up sore and in jeopardy of missing round 1 and opening round. So, yeah, it's chaos as usual.
Calf injuries always deemed the old man's injury. It seems like we've had a lot of calf awareness type injuries over the pre-season. Is that what you found?
Yeah, so calf injuries over pre-season are always at the highest point. So running loads are always at the highest. Calf muscle groups take the highest load when we run. It's up to 50% of the load compared to the rest of the body. And so if you're not prepared for the high intensity nature of sort of the pre-season match sim games and trainings, then injuries are at their highest.
You hate to see some players get repeat injuries. We've seen Will Day over the off-season. He's going to miss some footy. But Noah Long just can't take a trick for West Coast. And that knee injury of concern longer term.
Oh, it's one of the worst you'll see. Rarely do you see a full knee dislocation, and that's what happened for Noah, unfortunately. So you see the kneecap pop out occasionally, but for the actual tibia and femur to dislocate, I reckon we haven't seen one in about 7 or 8 years in the AFL. From what I hear as well, the damage around the knee is as bad as you'd get. So fingers crossed for Noah that, he can get back and play football again in the future, but it's going to be at least 12 months for him, unfortunately.
I always just wince my way through this segment every year, every week with Steve. My wife makes me watch The Pit. Have you seen that on HBO? It's the one in the emergency room, and I sit there wincing, and I've got to put my hand up to the screen because I can't watch it. And every time Steve comes on, he tells me all these injuries. I can't take it too much. That's a really nasty one for Noah Long, and we've seen some sort of strange stuff in the pre-season as well.
Yeah, well, Bailey Fritchett's come out. He's obviously in jeopardy of missing round 1, but unfootball related, obviously, trying to break up a fight between his dogs, and he's gone in for surgery. So unusual. It reminded me. I remember a number of years ago we had Jamie Cripps almost miss a game for a stingray incident down at the beach, and we had to put his foot in a bucket of water to get him on a plane and get him across to Melbourne. So the weird ones come this time of the year, as always. And then on the weekend, I don't know if you guys saw poor Elliot Yeo having to pull out the skipping rope during an interchange break in that first quarter. But obviously West Coast pulling out all the stops to try to keep him going. And I guess for him, with his soft tissue history down and around that calf and Achilles area, just trying to keep him warm is needed on the bench with a skipping rope.
Yeah, it was a little bit strange to see that on the side of the ground, just doing the double Dutch skipping out there on the boundary line. Steve, great to chat to you, mate. I know you'll be fond of all information as we get through with some of these players and how quickly or not they might be able to get back. You were right on the money last year, and looking forward to chatting to you again throughout the season.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to it.
Steve Gravina there from Frontrunner Physiotherapy.
Speaking about some weird injuries, this one I don't think made the press at the time, but we just recruited Jeff Farmer to the football club. We're doing yoga in one of the rooms, and we had the picture frames of the jumpers above him, and he must have hit it, and it smashed. So the glass smashed, and it fell down, and a shard of glass about that long stuck into his quad, just missing his artery. And he was our prime recruit at that particular stage. He was very lucky that wasn't another centimetre to the right.
Far out. What was the reaction of everyone in the room?
Well, we got out of the way because there was glass everywhere, but we were just worried about him. And it was still stuck in there, and then we had to sort of pull it out and blood everywhere. And very fortunate he was.
Geez, if you watch The Pit, don't pull it out. That's the worst thing you do for people that might have been watching that show. Hase, really impressive debut from you today on the Footy Interchange. You get to come back next week. Absolutely. Scully's no chance of returning. But no, it's been great to get around the country and have a chat to everyone. We'll be back each and every Tuesday. We're here thanks to SavvyWise. Make sure you check them out, particularly if you're in accounting. There are AI platforms for accountants, savvywise.com.au. We will be bringing back our Footy Interchange Exchange next week. So that's the show where people get their chance to ask a question of us, or if they want to have an opinion on anything, you can throw that through to us. So just hit us up on social media. Drop a comment in the YouTube comments as well, and we'll address those next week. But keep an eye out on the BackChat socials for the queue to send those questions through, or you can send through emails as well through those channels. Brilliant stuff, Hase. Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks, mate.
It's been great to have you along. We'll see you next week. Good luck to all the teams in opening round and to those teams that aren't playing this week. It's just disappointing, really. We've got to get that changed for next week. But terrific to have your company. Great to be back. Season 2026 on the Footy Interchange.